The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Alexander De Croo, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Belgium. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as leaders from around the world flock to the UN this week, they should only have one ambition: find a way out of the conflicts in Sudan, the Middle East, Ukraine, and all too many other places. These conflicts are close to our homes and cities, bringing war and famine and terrible tragedies to families and societies. When we take a brief look back in time, history teaches us a lesson. Just after Andrei Sakharov had developed the first Soviet hydrogen bomb in 1955, the nuclear arms race and Soviet doctrine seriously troubled him, because he saw that human rights and human dignity were an absolute necessity, a precondition, not just for nuclear security, but for prevention of war. The fight for human rights defined him and turned him into an international advocate, culminating in the Nobel Peace Prize 20 years later. In its remarks, the Nobel Committee noted that Sakharov fought against the abuse of power and all forms of violation of human dignity. Looking at the world today, it is crucial to remember Sakharov's legacy. Across the globe, human dignity and the rule of law are receding, and in many cases, they are absent. And where the respect for human life and the promise of rule of law fades, armed conflict loom large. History might not repeat itself, but it surely rhymes. In the Middle East, decades of dehumanizing enemy has led to a vicious cycle of violence, resulting in the killing of over 40,000 people in less than a year. This man-made conflict has proven one of the deadliest in decades. And this conflict didn't start with a horrific terrorist attack against Israel, killing over 1,400 Israeli citizens almost a year ago. But on the 7th of October, Belgium immediately acknowledged Israel's right to defend itself, and we called for the unconditional release of all hostages. Early on in the Gaza war, my government warned against the lack of respect for international humanitarian law on both sides, and the disproportionate attack with the blatant disregard for Palestinian civilian life. Almost 1 year later, we must sadly acknowledge that the extremes on both sides still set the tone of this conflict. Fanatics believe that military power can end this conflict. This is a delusion. To achieve peace, we need a proper roadmap, political courage, not mere tactics to remain in power another day. We have been calling for an immediate and lasting ceasefire for many months, but today it seems more distant than ever. Hostilities need to stop before the whole region becomes engulfed in violence. Action speaks louder than words. Belgium has imposed a weapons embargo. We never ceased our support to UNRWA and other humanitarian organizations. Together with the EU, we have imposed sanctions on Hamas, but also on extremist settlers and settler organizations. For every innocent life lost in Gaza and every discovery of a dead hostage, the prospect of future peace may seem more distant than ever. Today, Gaza lies in rubble. Over 15,000 people need prosthetics because of lost limbs. 10,000 of these victims are children. Where is human dignity in all of this? However, there is a way out. I'm convinced that it starts with the recognition of the right to exist of both Israel and Palestine, based on the 1967 borders. We should all engage with Palestinian and Israeli leaders who recognize these rights and who oppose both anti-Semitism and anti-Palestinian feelings. Only then we can start articulating a viable pathway for a two-state solution. Mr. President, dear colleagues, Vladimir Putin has been waging war in Europe for more than 2 years now. And there is one simple truth. He can stop the illegal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine right now. His madness continues to have devastating consequences for the Ukrainian people. One man alone can stop the killing of thousands of civilians, can end the continuous violence against Ukrainians whose future has been put on hold. Only he can end the shelling, end the bombing, the indiscriminate attacks on bridges, on roads, on energy infrastructure, on hospitals, on schools, and on people's houses. Widespread and disturbing brutality has been established by various independent international inquiries. None of us can and should look away. Over the past year, the Belgian-Ukraine Fund spent 1.7 billion euros on military equipment, humanitarian aid, and on the reconstruction of Ukraine's hardest-hit regions. Belgium's development agency is helping Ukraine's recovery and is preparing for joining the European Union. The people of Ukraine will be battling against another cold winter soon. That is why we are winterizing energy provision in hundreds of hospitals. Over the past 2 years, we have often pronounced the words, "for as long as it takes." We do not take this promise lightly. As the Russians continue to bomb cities, Ukraine's call for more air defense is pure self-protection. How else can they keep their citizens safe? The buildup of a strong Ukraine F-16 force is an integral part of our support. We will transfer all of our fighter jets when they leave the Belgian Air Force. The total amounts to at least 30 over the coming years. We want to help protect the people of Ukraine. The aggressor shall not win. And it is why our support for Ukraine stands strong. To all of you who aspire for peace, it will only come about when we force President Putin to stop his aggression against Ukraine. Mesdames et messieurs, il est clair que nous vivons dans un monde polarisé et profondément divisé. Ce constat pourrait nous amener à croire que le multilatéralisme a échoué à tous les niveaux. Ce serait une erreur. Il y a 1 an, un traité qui protège la biodiversité en haute mer a été adopté. Cette initiative collective prouve qu'il est encore possible d'être unis face à l'urgence climatique et environnementale. La réponse mondiale au Mpox et la réaction du CDC africain à l'épidémie dont sont un autre exemple de progrès. L'Union européenne et la Belgique ont investi de manière significative dans la production et l'accès aux vaccins en Afrique. Nous avons besoin de plus de solidarité et de coopération. Et ces mots peuvent paraître idéalistes et naïfs, mais nous ne pouvons relever les défis communs qu'en travaillant ensemble. Partout dans le monde, les phénomènes météorologiques extrêmes se multiplient. Cette semaine dernière encore, de fortes pluies ont provoqué des inondations dans de vastes régions de l'Europe de l'Est et l'Europe centrale. Notre planète et toutes les formes de vie qui s'y trouvent sont confrontées à d'énormes défis. Ce n'est cependant pas le moment de désespérer et de revoir nos ambitions à la baisse. Bien au contraire, l'ingéniosité humaine, la concurrence durable et les changements de comportement bien ancrés peuvent atténuer les effets du changement climatique et nous aider à nous adapter. Nous avons redoublé d'efforts afin de relever encore nos ambitions en matière de climat et des océans. Nous sommes prêts à travailler avec nos partenaires, en particulier dans les pays d'Afrique, les plus vulnérables, en leur fournissant du financement et en renforçant leurs capacités. Cet automne, la CAP sur la biodiversité à Cali et la COP sur le climat à Bakou seront à nouveau des moments clés pour l'avenir des populations de la planète. Ladies and gentlemen, in all those years, talk about conflict prevention, peace building, and peacekeeping has multiplied. Unfortunately, this has not stopped conflicts from becoming more numerous, deadly, and enduring. The number of aid workers killed has reached record highs. Number of refugees continue to rise year after year. Our common humanity seems to be in a deep crisis. Which brings me back to the lessons of Andrei Sakharov, which he taught us. Where human rights and human dignity are absent, conflicts loom large, and the most vulnerable bear the brunt. A new beginning, with the Pact for the Future, calls for, and must therefore start with our recommitment to the UN Charter, to the rule of law, and to the respect for human dignity. I thank you.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Belgium. We have heard the last speaker in the general debate for this meeting.